bad news for Brexit. The British Parliament has said no again to the latest alternatives to the government's unpopular European Union divorce deal.
And the number of measles cases across the country is now closing in on 400. And the CDC says there are already more this year than all of last year. Rolling Stone magazine now says the lead singer of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, will undergo surgery to replace a valve in his heart.
Kids obsessed with the video game Fortnite are causing more concern among doctors. Many are now recommending therapy to break the habit. The Boston Globe reports some kids have suffered extreme weight loss because they refuse to stop playing the game to even eat. One boy was hospitalized for 11 days after breaking into his family's car with a hammer to get his gaming device. Experts say the game's mix of interaction, risk, and reward make it irresistible to so many kids.
And we begin with the updates on the slain Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist Nipsey Hussle, with law enforcement saying his murder outside of his clothing store in Los Angeles was a targeted hit. As people all over the world mourn, the investigation continues. So I want to go to Romina Puga, who's outside of the LAPD headquarters in Los Angeles. Romina, there was a vigil last night, but it ended up a bit of a chaotic situation, no?
Yeah, it was a chaotic night. People thought they heard gunshots and started to flee the vigil, causing a stampede, which left 19 injured, one in critical condition. Officials believe that one was actually hit by a vehicle. But police have found no evidence of gunshots. They think maybe it was a fight or another loud sound that startled people. But either way, it turned a somber event meant to honor and remember everything great that Nipsey Hussle did for his community into this chaotic night. And we're here at the LAPD headquarters for a presser that's going to happen this morning, giving us more information on that vigil and the suspect that they identified. His name is Eric Holder. They've identified him and the vehicle, the license plate that he fled the scene in, and we're going to find out a little bit more on what's happening with that investigation in just a little while.
And yeah, I just want to ask you about the meeting that was supposed to happen yesterday. You know, Nipsey Hussle was going to be meeting with the LAPD about curbing gun violence, and then of course he was gunned down himself. Yeah. Did that meeting take place?
We're told the meeting did take place. It was a private meeting, and we're going to find out more about what happened, what was talked about at that meeting, again, at this presser in just a little bit. But it was a big mission of his, and the irony that he was shot just a day before this meeting about gang violence.
All right, Romina, we're just going to be waiting for those updates. A very tragic situation. Thank you so much. All right, guys, so President Trump's threat to shut down the southern border is looming large. But now border state Republicans are hesitant, and they're saying, hold on a second. So I want to go to Karen Travers, who's at the White House, and we have Matt Gutman, who joins us live from the border in El Paso. Matt, let's start with you. The difference in opinion may just boil down to money. There's a huge financial impact, so walk us through that.
There's an enormous financial impact, and actually they're already starting to feel it here, Kimberly. I want you to take a look at this line. We're seeing some cars coming through. Most of these cars have had to wait for about 2 hours to get through the line. The normal wait is half an hour, and I'm going to have my cameraman Juan point over to those people, the pedestrian crossers. It's taken them 3 hours to cross. That means that goods and services and people who work in El Paso who live in Ciudad Juarez are late for jobs. It's taken produce longer to get in. So just this city of El Paso accounts for $103 billion every year in commerce crossing those bridges. And there's this other cottage industry that sprung up in El Paso to service all the people coming from Mexico. And the way the mayor here, DeMargo, described it as this fluid interborder area. There's never really been this hard border. There's always been this intermingling between El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. And I asked him a couple of questions about how he viewed President Trump's threat to shut down the border, and I think it's mild to say that he was not at all pleased.
What happens to the city of El Paso if that border shuts down?
Well, it's critical to the city of El Paso, and it's critical to Texas, and it's critical to the nation. It would be harmful all the way around. We have $103 billion of annualized trade that goes through. We have 6 bridges here. We have 6 of the 28 bridges that cross to Mexico from Texas.
$103 billion just in El Paso?
Just through our ports here on an annualized basis.
Did President Trump or anybody from his administration consult you about this possible move?
No.
There's a smirk there, and that's because...
Nobody contacted us. Largest city on the U.S.-Mexico border. No one's asked for impact on that.
Not a happy. He's clearly not a happy camper about what might happen here. And again, it's still a might, but we do know at this point that DHS officials are going to meet with White House officials at some point this week to discuss some kind of a plan. But I am told by pretty senior officials that they don't even have a time frame of when they might start this and when this might happen. So a lot is still in the air. The impact is already being felt. And not only is it just in El Paso, the 2,000-mile-long border between the U.S. and Mexico accounts for over $550 billion worth of commerce. That's an enormous chunk of the economy. Many hundreds of thousands of people rely on the ability to go between these borders, and jobs depend on it. One more thing, we're going to feel it too in the supermarkets, because 40% of all fruits and vegetables, so much produce comes from Mexico to the United States every single day. You shut that down and we're going to not be able to have the avocados and the limes and the fruit and the berries that we have become so accustomed to getting at very low prices at our supermarket. So it'll be a pretty nationally wide felt impact if this actually does happen, Kimberly.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. And I want to stick with this story because there's news this morning that Secretary Nielsen has cut her trip to Europe short to oversee these decisions at the border and come up with a plan. So, Karen, what is the plan? And it seems like the border state Republicans aren't really on the same page.
Yeah, there isn't a plan right now, Kimberly. And you mentioned the DHS Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, was scheduled to be in Europe this week for a series of meetings on security issues. She came back to Washington to oversee the efforts right now on the border. And yesterday, senior administration officials could not give details as to what a plan would look like, how this threat from the president could be implemented, and when. Remember, last week, the president said in a tweet and then reiterated that to reporters that he would do this as soon as this week. Over the weekend, senior officials backed him up on that and said he is very serious about this threat, which we should note is something he has threatened before. But how this would look, when this would go into effect, that's not clear. The administration says White House officials and officials from the Department of Homeland Security would be meeting this week to try and develop a plan, but that certainly does not seem like something that would be ready for the president to make this move by the end of the week.
Yes, Karen, I also want to ask you about, President Trump's, his tweet storm this morning. A lot of tweets about Puerto Rico. What's going on there, and was he being truthful in what he was saying?
The president started this last night, Kimberly, tweeting about Puerto Rico. There is aid right now that is stalled up on Capitol Hill, aid that would be going to states in the Midwest who are dealing with devastating flooding, and aid to Puerto Rico, still recovering, still digging out from that devastating hurricane a couple years ago. And the president this morning reiterating that and saying, as you see there, Puerto Rico got $91 billion for the hurricane, more money than has ever been gotten for a hurricane before. He says local politicians there are complaining and asking for more money. Now, to pull that apart a bit, Kimberly, $91 billion is a bit of an exaggeration by the president. They did not get that money. Fact checkers who've looked into this say that would be kind of the high water mark of what they could get over a very long period, maybe up to 20 years of aid. That is not something that there's been a check handed over from the government to start with the recovery efforts down there.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously recovery takes a long time. Do we have any idea of what the people still need? He's saying they have enough money, but they may need more.
Yeah, they certainly have said that they need more, and this has all been very political from day one. And the president's been criticized for how he's talked about Puerto Rico after the hurricane hit there. Very different than what we've heard from the president when he's visited states like Texas and Florida and Alabama in the immediate impact of storms that hit there. Critics will say the president's been much more willing to open up the pocketbook, the federal government, and give money to those states. And the way he's talked about Puerto Rico is in a way that they feel does a disservice down there, that he's referring to them as not Americans and that they don't deserve to get this money. Reminder that there were nearly 3,000 people that died from that storm.
Yeah, and he was making some very strong comments about the mayor of San Juan. Do we have any reaction from people that you were talking to about that?
Yeah, you know, this was not something that was getting a lot of attention this morning when I was talking to ABC radio stations across the country. And I think a lot of this is that they've heard this from the president before. You know, this is a political back and forth that has been taking place since the moment that storm first hit. The president has certainly sparred with local officials down there, insisting that he and his administration have given everything they've asked for. That's not been the view from locals on the ground.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. And we're lucky to have the mayor of Puerto Rico on the phone with us, Carmen Yulín Cruz of San Juan, on the phone with us. I just want to ask you, what was your reaction to the president's tweet this morning? He was saying, calling you incompetent and crazed. How did you react to that?
Well, look, the president can run all he wants, but he cannot hide from the truth. And somebody at the White House should inform the president of the ill-fated actions that he has taken. Let's look at the facts. Over 3,000 Puerto Ricans died because his administration and his lack of leadership turned this into a bureaucratic and ineffective mess that left Puerto Rico without any electrical power, without medication, without water or food, for almost 6 months to a year. That's number one. Number two, it has been amply documented by independent studies by Brooke Long, who formerly oversaw FEMA, saying that it took FEMA longer than they expected to get things off the ground. The president continues to become what he criticizes. He's becoming fake news. No, Mr. President, Puerto Rico has not gotten $91 billion. You should immediately fire anyone that told you that at the White House. Puerto Rico has requested that in order to take care of everything that needs to happen, $91 billion are to be expected to be used. But the president has continuously undermined those efforts. FEMA continues to not give the municipalities and the cities of Puerto Rico what they need according to the law. And Puerto Rico has been treated quite differently. There is a legal obligation because we are American citizens, but there is a moral obligation which the president has never understood. This is never about him or his vanity. This is not about politics. This is about saving lives. And what we're talking about, 600 million people for 1.3 million Puerto Ricans out of the 3.2 million to put food on the table. What we're talking about is that there's still an estimate of about 30,000 people with blue tarps or blue roofs, which will not be able to withstand another even tropical storm. What we're talking about is that the economy of Puerto Rico still continues to be in dire need because of this not one, but two hurricanes. But the president does not get it. I don't know if it is because his incompetence has reached levels beyond anything that anyone has ever seen. I don't know if because, again, he continues to be a hater-in-chief rather than a commander-in-chief. I don't know if it is because he discriminates because we are in the Caribbean and we are Latinos and we are people of color. But the truth is that Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez, alongside a host of other senators and members of Congress, have put forth ideas on how this could be made better. But the president continues to hold on to lack of evidence, continues to hold on to falsehood, and continues to lie and not to tell the truth. But we know the truth. We know he's been incompetent. We know he's been ineffective. The American people know it, and the world knows it.
Yeah, so there's lots more recovery efforts that need to take place. And I just want to correct myself. I said Mayor of Puerto Rico. I meant Mayor of San Juan. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. So in other tweets that President Trump was putting out this morning, he was also talking about the Affordable Care Act and how he wants to punt the vote until after the election. So I want to bring in John Parkinson, who's live on Capitol Hill. John, just tell me how congressional Democrats were reacting to this.
They're giddy, right? I mean, I think the president's really playing into the Democratic playbook at this point. It's been about a week that they've just every day been out here talking about health care, and this really plays into the Democratic base's strength right now, I think. A week ago, we saw the Department of Justice sign on to this Texas decision to overturn all of Obamacare, and without a plan from Republicans to replace it, Democrats have really been hammering them each and every day. This morning, we had House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer out here on Capitol Hill with a lot of their Democratic colleagues, and they were talking about a couple of resolutions that are going to be moving through Congress in the next couple days. At least in the House, we'll have a vote today on a resolution that condemns this action from DOJ and calls on the Trump administration to withdraw its support for this legal decision. And we've got a bite here from Chuck Schumer where he's really just so giddy and so happy about what the president said today, last night when he's reversing this decision to put off a vote until 2021.
Republicans failed to pass any of their health care plans in Congress, so they're trying to repeal health care in the courts. This reeks of desperation, and they do not have a backup plan. Last night, the president tweeted that they will come up with their plan in 2021. Translation, they have no health care plan. It's the same old song they've been singing. Therefore, repeal, they have no replace. President Trump confirmed that he will hold Americans hostage through the 2020 election when it comes to health care.
Yeah, I see that. And so
that's...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's 2 years from now, really, and for a lot of Republicans that are on the fence in tight races, I think that they're going to be relieved to hear that the president's putting this off. Susan Collins was out last week, right after the Department of Justice said that they were signing on in support of this decision, and she said, "You guys are putting the cart before the horse. We need a plan to replace Obamacare before we try and overturn it." And so I think this is good news for a lot of Republicans that privately were fuming about this decision from the administration.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate those updates. So guys, we're moving on to this very, very tragic story that we reported yesterday. A young college girl mistaking a car for her Uber and ending up dead. And now her campus officials are making sure everyone else stays vigilant. So I want to go to Victor Oquendo in Columbia, South Carolina with more. Victor?
Kimberly, this is the spot where police say Samantha Josephson got into the wrong car, and now there are increased calls for safety. The University of South Carolina president sending a letter to students school-wide urging them to simply ask their rideshare driver, "What's my name?" before getting into a car, and to double-check the make, model, and license plate. The 21-year-old last seen outside this bar early Friday morning, hopping into what she mistakenly thought was her Uber. Police say the man behind the wheel, Nathaniel Rowland, kidnapped and killed her. On Monday, the coroner releasing the student's cause of death, announcing she was killed by multiple sharp force objects. Uber has released a statement calling this an unspeakable crime, saying their hearts are with Samantha Josephson's family and loved ones. Now South Carolina lawmakers are taking action. A bill has been proposed, and it has bipartisan support. It would require Ubers and Lyfts to have illuminated stickers right there on the windshield, making those vehicles easier to identify, and that bill is named after Samantha Josephson. Kimberly?
Yeah, Victor, thank you so much. A very scary story that could happen to anyone. And in another super bizarre story out of North Dakota today, 4 people were found dead inside of a business. So I want to go to Alex Perez. He's in Mandan, North Dakota with more. Alex, do we know what happened?
Yeah, a huge mystery here in Mandan, North Dakota, Kimberly. Authorities have been working on trying to figure this all out. Take a look behind me here. That is the business we're talking about, RJR Management Company. You can see there's a police vehicle still parked outside of this building. And I want you to take a closer look at the building. You might see there are security cameras on the outside of this building, and authorities are reviewing that surveillance footage and asking neighboring businesses for their surveillance footage as they try to put this all together. Now, this all started about 7:30 Monday morning. Authorities got a call, a medical call here at this business, and when they arrived, they found 4 bodies inside, 3 males, 1 female. At this point, authorities are keeping a lot of the details tight-lipped, details about the investigation. We don't know how those people died. We know they were all adults. Authorities, during their last update, called this a homicide investigation. We are expecting they're going to give us another update at some point today, and maybe they will elaborate a little bit more on what information they have. But they made it a point to make sure the public knew that they do not feel there is a threat to the general public. But of course, you can imagine this is a tight-knit community. So people here hearing what happened, they want answers and they want police to get to the bottom of this. Kimberly?
All right, Alex, thank you so much. So crazy. So guys, before we go, I think it's only proper to give you a national forecast. So here's Rob Marciano. Rob?
Hello, Kimberly. Great to be with you today. We are tracking a number of items across the country, and we'll even go international towards the end of this weathercast. We'll start you off with what's happening across the upper Midwest, notably just outside of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, where the rivers are high. The Minnesota River is flooding, and it swept this car off the road with the driver inside it. Luckily, they managed to get out unharmed, but just goes to show you how little water it takes when it's rushing to sweep your car off the road. So that is not a smart move. Meanwhile, across the southeast, we're looking at a coastal storm. This is pretty a strong upper-level system that's going to kind of give its energy to a coastal low that will increase in intensity throughout the day today. Rain and wind along the coast, maybe a little bit of snow mixing in along I-77 north of Charlotte. Can you believe that for this April 2nd? And then by tomorrow morning, this is mostly east of New York City, eastern Long Island, eastern Mass, including Boston. At least to start the morning rush will be a bit of a mess. Rain and wind and waves, and yes, snow mixing in and around the Boston area towards the end of this thing. Meanwhile, in the west, we've got a pretty significant storm heading there today for the entire west coast with rain and mountain snow. That traverses into the plains tomorrow with a severe weather threat late in the day for parts of North Texas. And then on Thursday, we're looking for the severe weather threat to expand and to increase in intensity potentially across more highly populated areas, notably East Texas, much of Louisiana, Arkansas, and the mid and lower Mississippi River valleys. We could see hail, thunderstorms, and maybe even a tornado that looks like this. Look at this video out of Malaysia. This is the west coast of Malaysia yesterday, a water spout developing right along that resort beach community and eventually drifting onshore, doing some damage to buildings. No immediate reports of injuries there, but a scary sight. When you get those water spouts going, they suck up all that water. They get that pristine white, very dense look about them, unlike a tornado that has a lot of dirt. These things look very clear and clean, but they are quite menacing. Hopefully, Kimberly, we won't see any water spouts with this storm heading up the East Coast today. Back over to you.
I sure hope not. Even the weather a little bit dreary today. All right, my friends, I hope you continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, stick around. We're going to have the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. and then you can join us for World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks. I'll see you tomorrow.